Hey there, guys. What's going on? Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys with your host and friendly neighborhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Coming to you today from a slightly different studio. Coming to you today from the dining room table. For the second time we're recording this, everything was going tremendously for about the first hour, and then I accidentally forgot to change to the display screen as I was trying to talk about something, and as a result, it completely threw the entire recording off. So, had to start again. So an hour lost of work. It's now past midnight on a bloody Saturday night into Sunday morning. I'm here doing this again. Yay, so much fun. So anyway, point being, we're going to get straight into, we're going to recap some of the things that we've been going over in past episodes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just checking my phone. So, first important thing to go over, we've been covering the recent videos that have been coming out from Mr. Jeffrey Epstein's island, courtesy of Mr. James O'Keefe. James O'Keefe has been doing some great work at the moment, putting himself in the firing line of some very powerful, influential people that do not hesitate to make people disappear, quite literally. We have two videos to go through now. So he's recently released footage that he's uncovered from inside the residences on Little St. James, which is the island that Jeffrey Epstein owned, where obviously all these horrific abuses of, minors that he'd sex trafficked to no one, apparently, took place. Okay, so we covered last time, I believe it was, or maybe in the episode before, the picture that was located in the kitchen that featured a nude baby in a sink holding what James described as a phallic-shaped toy, which, just to clarify again, this is not saying that, nothing to speak on behalf of Jeffrey and the people that were on the island and stuff like that. But apparently the toy in question was just a common designed, like, shaker toy at the time. Okay, according to, somebody found the exact same toy in the comments, said that it was very common, around the time this photo would have been taken. I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, it's clearly a very old photo that would have been taken on a very old camera, maybe in the 90s, 80s, somewhere around there, okay? And it was just a common design, it was just a common toy to have at the time, okay? So the point being is that why is that image of a nude baby holding something of that shape? Why is this photo in particular, which could just be an innocent family photo, really innocent family photo, in Jeffrey Epstein's possession, in the kitchen, on an island where these horrific rapes of minors are taking place? The biggest question is, what is Jeffrey thinking, and what are his clients thinking when they look at that photo on that island, in that environment, knowing what is going on, and in the kitchen somehow not being put off their food? Okay, I do not get it. That's where the real troubling element that photo comes in my opinion. Because otherwise, it's just, it could just be a very nice memory that a mother and father would want to have of when their child is very, very young. At the advent of when cameras were coming out, and you could capture these moments and keep them forever. Okay. So, point being now, we've got more coming out from Mr. O'Keefe. So, we have footage from inside the library. We also have footage from inside the bedroom. The bedroom in particular is very interesting, because we learn a little bit about more of the contacts that Jeffrey had and was corresponding with on the regular when he was on said island. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you the video footage now coming from the library, and we'll have a little talk about it as we go.
Today, we release more never-before-seen video and images from inside Jeffrey Epstein's former island home, showing bizarre statues and a cryptic message written on a chalkboard by Jeffrey Epstein himself.
Now, there will be something coming out later in this video that will give us the indication of how we know very likely that it was actually Jeffrey that wrote this.
Jeffrey Epstein Island, also known as Little St. James in the Virgin Islands.
Fun fact, when I recorded this last, so obviously I would have been speaking about this just an hour ago, because I was recording this very segment of the podcast an hour ago before I screwed up the recording. So initially I had the comment of being like, how do we know that it was Jeffrey that wrote this? No, we do have a good indication that Jeffrey wrote this, as we'll go into in the next couple of minutes.
Last time we took you inside the kitchen to show that really creepy image of a baby in a sink.
So, there we go. Let me go back. So this is the image we were talking about. So here it is. So this here, if you look at the image in itself, obviously it's got the black and white filter on it. It's got the black and white monochrome on it at the moment. This toy shape here, which you can see, apparently very common at the time. And again, this might be just a photo that two loving parents would want to snap to keep that memory forever of being like, wow, looking back in it in like 20, 30 years, look at how young, our son or our daughter was. Look at how young we were, those kinds of things. Okay. Things that you can keep forever. But why is this hung up in the kitchen of the private residence on a private island, which is being used solely for I'm tongue twisting over my words now. For the purpose is the word I'm looking for the purpose of sex trafficking and raping young girls. Truly, truly disgusting stuff.
YouTubers have snuck on the island. Luke Radowski, Tyler Olivier getting images of the outside of the structures. But today we're going to take you inside the structures, inside Jeffrey Epstein's library. We're going to take a closer look. Now, this has never been seen before. We are now...
So this is the image that obviously that I was discussing last time, but for those of you who may be listening, not watching, it is almost like a pseudo-Roman architecture that I can see. At least that's the vibe I get from it when I look at it. So it's almost like a modernized take. So you've got these like architectural decorated pillars that go up the wall. So the walls are aligned with adorned with bookcases, okay, and they have like these wooden doors with like a mesh on the front, which you can open to access the books that are inside. Very, very nice, rustic architecture, very visually pleasing. Okay, this would be like if you walked into this as like your study in like your private mansion. Okay, it's almost like a Lara Croft-esque, but more Roman rustic kind of thing. Like it's got all these like little designs and murals all up along the upper side and stuff like that. Okay. The one thing that's getting me though is the very white carpets. Obviously from the video which you just would have seen where it was panning across the room, this is carpet, but this instantly puts me in the frame of mind of like a video game where the floor is glitched out and the textures aren't appearing and you can just see down into the infinite bright nothingness, okay, that's just surrounding the map. Obviously, if you with a video game, the map exists almost like in this vacuum, and depending on like the ambient state of the game, whether it's like a really sunny atmosphere and stuff like that, if you were to no clip out of the game, then all of the outside surrounding infinite space of the map would just be complete white, or would just be black, or would just be matching the colors that are on the color palette of the game or whatever, but they just extend into infinite nothingness because the texture has disappeared. This is almost like what it looks like on the floor. There's this really white carpet on the floor in contrast to like the sort of brown wooden color of the floorboards. And in the middle of the carpet is sat 4 chairs in 4 cardinal directions facing each other, almost like, again, you're having a conversation with 4 people and you're all facing each other. And this black desk that's on the desk that's on the other side with these like very fancy slippers and stuff like that, almost like looks like something Aladdin would wear. So you have all of this really, really nice stuff. Obviously, Jeffrey Epstein was a very, 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 very wealthy man. So obviously he could, adorn all this lovely architecture and furnishings. But that's the kind of visual picture that I wanted to give to you guys who might be listening. So again, imagine looking at the corner of the room, so you can see the one corner, you can see the other. There's bookcases all about along the walls, and then in the middle of the wall there's this gigantic chalkboard. Okay, we're talking gigantic, so imagine like like if you've been to a university lecture theatre where they've got the big boards which you can slide up and down, even bigger than that. Okay, even bigger than that. This is almost like the size of a like a slightly smaller than a movie screen, nearly. If you go to like again, some cinemas have stupidly big screens nowadays, but again, imagine it's almost like a massive flat screen TV. If you blew it up, massive. So like a kind of dimension you might have if you have like an indoor home cinema, that kind of thing.
Now, inside the library, dozens of books line the walls, including literature like Ernest Hemingway's Selected Letters, vacation reads such as Robert Ludlum's The Bourne Ultimatum, denser titles like The Golden Age of Theoretical Physics, and Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses. Now, a closer inspection revealed unusual objects.
Those are those Aladdin slippers.
Winged figures in plague masks, and one.
So yeah, this statue here, this statue is very interesting choice as well. But this statue here, it's like a winged figure that's almost doing like this really strong gymnastics pose. So it's a winged male with a plague mask on, doing like this kind of pike with his legs up in the air position, almost like you'd kind of see a person on the balance beam do, where they would put their hands on the beam behind them and have their upper body out in front of them and their legs pointed up towards the ceiling. So it's like if you follow me, the legs coming down, their body's going up, and then their hands connect to the bench or to the beam rather. That's the kind of position that this person's in. This next statue here, which James will explain a little bit about in a moment, as you can see here, is a statue of a young lady, presumably it's a youthful lady, but I don't know what exact age it would be. Put it this way, she's not old by any means. She's very, very young in her youthful years, with an exposed chest, so obviously with exposed breasts, and washing her female anatomy whilst sat on a bidet, as I'll let James explain for you now as well. And this is in Jeffrey Epstein's library.
One of a semi-nude young woman washing herself while seated on a bidet. Video and photos inside the library also show a horse whip, which is right here under the chalkboard, apparently
another odd
crafted
choice.
from leather and bones. And then we go to this chalkboard over here. Now this
So I'll pause it now so you can see this if you're watching it. So obviously we have many different terms which you can just about make out on the board. So you have things like power, as you can see here, deception, what appears to be, as James would say, mirror and face, dank brain over here, time and day, maybe. We have music, we have appears. I think this either says plots or plants. It's very hard to tell. All these sort of like unrelated terms, obviously power and deception, very tightly related. But point being, this obviously either Jeffrey here, who's the one very likely to have written this, was likely, this is my sort of theory on it, was giving sort of like, not necessarily a talk, but was talking with whoever it may have been that he was entertaining in this library, whether it was his business associates, whether it was world leaders, who knows who it was, right? And is giving some kind of talk on like ideas that they're going to be implementing, whatever, whether it's business oriented, whether it's politically oriented. And as he's going along explaining these things, he's writing down key terms as a measure of accenting them, as a measure of drawing extra emphasis to them. So, for example, whatever the hell this says by here, this looks like intellectual here, political maybe, this says down here on the bottom left. Why are we focusing on these things? Power. Okay, what do we need to get power? We need to do plots or plants, we need deception. So he's writing these terms down to draw attention, to create extra emphasis. That's my theory. Again, I don't know what the hell's going on here. Maybe we'll learn more about it in the future.
The board displayed cryptic words, including the word power, deception, mirror in face, dank brain, among others. Now, the chalkboard's message remains a mystery, and we're hoping that some of you in the audience can help decipher and ascertain what Epstein might be talking about here. This is, again, right after he was arrested. We compared the words on the chalkboard to...
So this is a side-by-side for those of you who are watching this now. So we have the power that was written on the board, and this is, again, how we likely corroborated, or how James likely corroborated that it was in fact Epstein that wrote this, is that the WER, that the way that Epstein has written power here, or the way the person writing this has written power here, is very similar to how the WER in this other letter, which is attributed to Epstein, where the word is shower, is. So again, one of the common ways you want to articulate if, say, a letter was written by a certain person, they try using this technique, for example, to try and catch the Zodiac killer, trying to work out somebody's handwriting profile so they can see that it's a good chance that, for example, if there's more than one murderer, again, the Zodiac killer was sending letters into the police departments, they would cross-reference handwritings of previous letters to see if there were differences in the styles, see how letters are formed, all of these things. And then that would give them indications on if it was the same person that had wrote the letters or if it was potentially a different person. So we have good reason to believe here, based on this, that it was in fact the same person that wrote on the chalkboard that wrote this letter. As a result, given that Epstein wrote this letter, it's very likely that he wrote these words on the chalkboard.
To a note Epstein wrote in his prison cell before his death. Several letters and letter combinations from the note match those on the chalkboard, which leads us to believe they were in fact written by Jeffrey Epstein. And we're not sure what this means, but we're hoping you and the audience can take a look at this and tell us what you think he was trying to say here. Was it a message he was sending to the world? We're receiving a lot of images.
So that's it then. He goes on to talk about the signal line and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're somebody that is watching this that happens to have any information, obviously get him on that signal line. So go to his X page, find the signal link, or find the signal number, or find the thing to go to his website and give tips and stuff like that. If you happen to know anything, then seriously, let's get it out there. You know what I mean? Let's have this case solved sooner rather than later, and let's put more pressure on the authorities. Talking Kash Patel, talking Pam Bondi, talking all these people to actually do something about what's been going on. So we also now, though, it's not just the library that we have. We also have footage from inside the bedroom that is attributed to Jeffrey Epstein, which is very, very interesting, again, to have this glimpse to have a look at. So we're going to go in and see that now as well.
Inside Epstein's bedroom, O'Keefe Media Group continues our exclusive tour of the private island formerly owned by the alleged sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and looking inside each of the buildings on the island. Today, we're going to bring you inside Jeffrey Epstein's bedroom. We've previously shown you the kitchen and the library, but in Epstein's bedroom, we've made our most dramatic discovery yet. Landline telephones that show pre-programmed speed dial buttons labeled with names. You see the phones on the side of the bedroom tables here. We're going to take a look at these phones and the names on them. But first, the room itself, sparsely furnished. On the desk, you see what's known as a phrenology skull.
So the phrenology skull, in this instance, is a skull where it has a bunch of lines denoting different areas that sort of mimic the shape of the brain by the looks, but basically, it almost looks like the kind of template you get in like a coloring book, and then the different shapes is where you're supposed to color in different colors. I might have had one of those when you were a kid. But within these are different words and different traits. And as James will explain, phrenology is kind of this like debunked idea that I believe someone's head shape or someone's actual like the shape of their head has something to do with their cognitive ability and stuff like that.
Phrenology is a debunked pseudoscience linking skull shape to personality traits.
There we go, skull shape to personality traits.
One bedside table, you see a notepad that says Little St. James, that's the name of the island, printed at the bottom of each page. And a set of
Be interested to know if there's anything in that notebook. So the reading glasses here, you can see here with the side-by-side, are very similar in design to the one that Jeffrey's wearing here. I'm not sure if the frames themselves in this instance are actually orange in this photo, or again, if it's just to highlight the similarity, I don't know. But highly doubt they're the same, obviously, but certainly very similar in the design. So again, might be a pair that were kept on the island, just to make sure that he had reading glasses there, whatever he's reading as he's going to sleep or whatever. If he's needs a pair of glasses for whatever reason, it's good to have that spare pair, in your holiday home, so to speak.
Worn by Epstein in deposition footage. The most striking detail, we see a Panasonic console phone on each bedside table. The multiple lines are labeled.
Okay, so James will explain here who these people are in a moment. But for example, we have the New York office. We have another person named Karina. We have another two names for a person known as Darren, one of which would likely be office and one of which would likely be the cell phone. Somebody by the name of Rich, or maybe Richard. Obviously, sometimes we shorten Richard to Rich. This is office phone. We have a cell phone number for somebody by the name of Mike. Cell phone number for somebody by the name of Anna, cell phone number for somebody by the name of Patrick, cell phone number for somebody by the name of Stephanie, or Steph, and also STC office, and a cell phone number for somebody by the name of Larry, and also for the kitchen, which is cut off just at the bottom.
The speed dial buttons bear the names of Epstein's staff and associates. These are the individuals Epstein called most frequently from his private island. Nobody has ever seen these before. We assume the FBI and the Department of Justice has these, but have not released it. Here you have.
Interesting to see what it might be like one of these old Panasonic style phones. I'm just trying to think, is there a possibility that they could be bugged? Is this like, did he make this choice because he knew, for example, that they would be hard to tap or hard to bug? Obviously, you can quite, the FBI or whatever agency that might have been after him or whatever, is, doubtful that they would have been, given how many times they tried to cover it up. But, did he choose these because maybe he was worried about phones being tapped or whatever? I don't know. I don't know enough about phones and the act of wiretapping and stuff like that to speak definitively on that. It's weird to have this kind of choice, or maybe it's just a relic of the time, because obviously Jeffrey has built up his wealth over a long period of time. So again, these might just be, relics of a time when he first acquired the island, maybe. Who knows?
You have NY office. That's Jeff Epstein's New York City office. This is Karina Shuliak, Epstein's last girlfriend. Darren off. That's Darren Indike, an Epstein advisor and lawyer. You have Rich office. That's Richard D. Kahn, Epstein's advisor and lawyer. And Patrick Sell, that's Patrick McMullen, an Epstein associate, and STC office, that's the Special Tax Office of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Here we have another phone that was actually in a different room, but we see some of the same names and some new names. We see a Carlos, a Danny, which looks to be scribbled out with Kim written above it, a Mike, an Anna, and a Juggly. Now, what's interesting about Juggly is at first we thought it was Ghislaine Maxwell's nickname, but from what we could see online, her nickname, Epstein referred to her as G-Max. Don't know who Juggly is, but maybe you in the audience can help us solve that mystery.
Juggly.
These are all of the known associates that Epstein would call on speed dial. Again, we assume the United States government has this. This is the first time anybody has published these on the internet. You might be wondering why we aren't just dumping all of this immediately. Some people in the comments saying you should publish everything right now. Well, that's really not what journalists are supposed to do. We're trying to corroborate this and verify that what you're seeing is legitimate and understand who is on these phones before we report this information to you. People are messaging us every minute here at...
And that's something which obviously people are criticizing, people like Pam Bondi and people like that. I've obviously done so as well. But you have, for example, the need to corroborate and verify this information is absolutely true. And that's why I like that at the moment he's bringing this out bit by bit. Because, for example, these are being released currently about one day at a time. So, again, it gives people the opportunity to digest the information as it's coming out. And, again, not have everything dumped on them in one big pile, basically. Which, again, would make things very hard to understand, given there's so much to sift through, given that James and his team have already sifted through a lot of the information that they have and have now been able to start connecting it in a way that makes it easier for us to understand. Obviously, it's still quite limited in the information that's coming out at the moment. And again, it's just more so descriptives, nothing really definitive in terms of making big breakthroughs. But again, it's far more than anything that we've had, from any kind of Department of Justice, especially the Democrat ones seemingly more and more intensely trying to cover this up. But again, Pam Bondi saying that the files were on her desk, they were going to be released, and then they had the binder gate, and then said there's thousands of these videos that have come out. And seemingly, again, she's on from what I understand, she's on Fox News all the time talking about these things, but again, nothing concretely being done. And you know, it's people again like James, why I'm singing his praises a lot at the moment, because he's putting himself, as I said, in the firing line of a lot of very powerful and influential people who don't want this information coming out. But again, he's forcing the hand of what seems to be a Justice Department that really does not want to go down this route. That really does not want these things coming out for whatever reason. But we needed to come out. We absolutely needed to come out. So James O'Keefe doing a massive service for the entire world right now who want these answers, who want to know the truth as to what went on that island. I think we all pretty much know, you know, although we could never prove it based on the information that is available in the public domain, we know. We know who was there. We know the likelihood of the people who were involved. You know, John Bryan, for example, obviously was recently scooped saying the things that he said about Prince Andrew. So again, we will see what happens in the very near future with this. But thank you very much, Mr. O'Keefe, for the amazing work that you're doing. Looking forward to covering more about this in the future. Coming on to now, however, bit more of a schism in UK politics. So there's something which I want to read to you now, and then there's also something which I want to go over, which I think was just poetically perfect, for lack of a better term. So Mr. John Perry recently published an open letter on X detailing that he had resigned his membership from Reform UK. Now, John Perry stood as a parliamentary candidate in many years, in 2015 and 2017 and 2024. So there's more and more people that are currently, you know, leaving Reform. Entire branches, from what I'm aware, basically closing down all up and down the country. Despite what other people within the party would like you to believe. But John's one of them. Dan Astley, I've forgotten his bloody name. I've forgotten how to say his surname. I've forgotten if there's an I in it or not. But he was a head of a Reform branch, left to join Homeland. But yeah, people were leaving all up and down because they see the direction that the party's going in. And what we're going to do now, we're going to read this letter because it's quite poetic, with a post that somebody else had made, not even, or just over 6 hours before this letter was posted. So on the 14th of May, this is, but so he published this on the 14th of May, sorry. Dear Reform UK leadership, after much reflection, I am writing to formally resign my membership of Reform UK, effective immediately. Since 2010, I have stood behind Nigel Farage's leadership, supporting the UK Independence Party, the Brexit Party, and Reform UK. I have been honoured to stand as a parliamentary candidate in 2015, 2017, and again in 2024. In 2019, my candidacy was withdrawn to support the Tories and led to unfulfilled Conservative promises on Brexit. As we know, Conservatives, they put the referendum in thinking that it was going to be a shoo-in, that we were going to stay in the EU, that it was not going to vote the way that we did. And they wanted it to just be an opinion poll, but they did not market it that way. They put it as a legally binding referendum, thinking that it would be a shoo-in. And the British public gave them a massive shock, gave the globalists like David Cameron, Rishi Sunak and all of the others a massive shock. So as a result, they've done everything they can to scupper it at every single opportunity. And now we have the Protect Democracy crowd on the left saying that we got to take us back into the EU. It's about time that we no vote, no nothing, just take us back in. People want it. So yeah, everything has been done to absolutely sabotage that and blame it on something which, the way that it was thought out, evidently, and tells you a lot when Nigel Farage resigned from UKIP, but what should be a crowning moment of victory, just shows you how badly the whole thing was thought out, and how, not just how badly the whole thing was thought out, how many people were in on the con. How many people were in on the con and betrayed the British people yet again. So, Throughout this time, I have consistently campaigned with integrity and conviction. In Havant, I have been proud to deliver results, placing us in the top 3 by vote share in Hampshire. In the 2024 general election, I, as the Reform candidate, polled 23.6%, making us the 8th most marginal Reform seat nationally, a testament to the hard work of our local supporters and the strength of our message. All good so far. All good so far. However, there may just be trouble in paradise, as he says, regrettably, I now feel compelled to step away from the party. My recent removal as interim chair of the Havant branch by Mohammed Zahidin Yusuf, following constructive suggestions for process improvements, was deeply disappointing and emblematic of a broader trend. Increasingly, branch autonomy is being curtailed and centralized by centralized micromanagement, and offers of help or innovation are often dismissed. Independent thinkers are sidelined or removed, and this rigid approach is not conducive to building a vibrant, grassroots-driven movement. Completely right. I am particularly dismayed by the treatment of principled individuals such as Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, Howard Cox, and Gawain Towler, with the latter who provided excellent, valuable materials for the 2024 general election. These are people whose contributions should be valued and welcomed, not pushed aside. I can also, in good conscience, continue to support what I view as the Toryfication of Reform UK. The party is increasingly departing from the very values that originally set it apart. I will be returning my Reform membership card along with a hard copy of this letter to Reform UK headquarters. To the many supporters, members and voters in Havant, thank you. I am sincerely humbled by the support and trust that you have shown in me over the years. So, biggest thing, going to read a few again. I am particularly dismayed by the treatment of principled individuals such as Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, Howard Cox and Gawain Towler. Why is this important? Why is this important? Obviously, the notion that people are resigning from Reform UK up and down the country is massive anyway, because Reform are being billed as the quote-unquote, the so-called alternative to the establishment, when again, they're just another branch of it. Reform exists not to challenge the establishment, but just to contain the wider nationalist populist movement that is uprising, not only in the UK, but all throughout Europe. There is a big nationalist wave coming, and the more that it's suppressed, the harder it's going to hit when it comes. But all they're trying to do is siphon a bit of the vote share from the people on the right-hand side of the political aisle that are simply just a bit confused. And not sure where to turn, and think that Reform are in fact anything resembling a quote-unquote right-wing populist party, when in his own words Nigel Farage said that he's not. But he come out when it was politically advantageous for him to do so, around when Reform was really starting to get popular towards the turn of the last election, when he literally called it the immigration election. And then he went back and said that, mass deportations, let alone net emigration, like re-migration, but mass deportations was going to be politically infeasible. We have to politically accommodate Islam, all of these things, and absolutely tanked his credibility. And people see through it now. A lot of people do see through it. You do have the cultists, you do have the Faragists that are simply stuck in the cult of Farage, and the reformers that simply can't see it, as evidenced by this comment on the post from somebody with a Reform logo in their bio. So this person has Reform UK, it appears to be something Latin phrase, but also resembles the communist red fist, the communist fist logo. Very weird, very, very weird. But again, tells you a lot when now Keir Starmer has stronger rhetoric on immigration, anti-immigration in particular, than Nigel Farage and Reform do. But this person commented, pardon me, I see you are happy for Labour to win a second term. The fact of the matter is, people are resigning because they see that Reform are basically no different. If anything, in some ways, they might be worse. So we do have to take care. I think in many ways, they are better. I like some things that they're planning to do economically, for example, such as raising the ceiling of income tax. I think income tax should be abolished in the first place anyway, because it is literally just theft. It is a fine you pay for being productive and being somebody that generates value in society. Not conducive to a good society whatsoever. It should absolutely be scrapped. But at the very least, they're planning on raising it to a minimum of 20,000. Your tax-free allowance will be 20,000 before you have to pay any income tax on that, which I think is a great start, okay? It is a start. Okay, so there's some things which I like, but the main issue is with immigration and cultural and demographic change. They are very, very weak on, even weaker than Labour at the moment. But the point being, why is this important? Well, earlier on that day, let me take you back to 6 hours earlier at 4:28 p.m. on May the 14th. Isabel Oakeshott, in her infinite wisdom, tweeted out the following, or posted the following on X. I know the dying Tory party wishes it were true, but there is no quote-unquote row engulfing reform, unquote. There is one embittered ex-member making a lot of noise. I think we've seen that voters don't care. And that seemingly one embittered ex-member, named by the name of Rupert Lowe, commented on the post and ratioed it 4-1, which I thought was very, very satisfying. The Reform leadership tried to put me in prison on false allegations because I questioned your Messiah. So I'm sure you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit, quote, embittered, unquote, at your party's weaponization of woke lawfare. Again, showing that they do the exact same things they accuse the government of doing. Isabel Oakeshott, went on about Lucy Connolly, for example, and the fact that she's held in prison as an absolute travesty. And they tried to put somebody in prison on false charges because, not Isabel Oakeshott in particular, I'm talking about reform here, I don't want that to get misconstrued. Isabel Oakeshott made a post about Lucy Connolly saying the fact she's still in prison is a travesty, and I completely agree. But then she'll say that about the weaponization of the lawfare system, or I call it the lawfare system, the weaponization of the law system in that regard, but then will more than happily demean the one person that wanted to stand up for what the people actually wanted. And as he's completely right, questioned your Messiah. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And evidently people are resonating with it. For context, Isabel's post got 123.6 thousand views with 1.5 thousand likes, and Rupert managed to quadruple that like number and a little bit more and some change with 58,000 views on his post. So truly, truly astonishing. But the fact of the matter is that Isabel posted this at 4:28 p.m. And then the same day at 10:30, John Perry posts his letter saying that he's resigning from Reform. Again, just a funny little coincidence maybe, but it was so satisfying that those two things happened within such a short period of each other. 6 hours later, smack down, somebody resigns who has long stood as a supporter of Nigel Farage for just around 15 years. Very, very interesting. Maybe there is more infighting going on with Reform than we have been led to believe. I certainly think so. I think they're panicking. Rose Lowe in particular has got them very, very rattled. Very, very rattled indeed. As Ben Habib and some of the others. Now, we've been speaking on behalf of the Boers that are facing, for lack of a better term, really, an extinction level threat in South Africa. And a lot of really awful things have been said about them by the current establishment, the evil establishment that has taken over South Africa. So, again, I'm going to play you a few videos now, one of which is, I believe it's from the African National Congress, but it's from the Parliament at the very least. And now the government in South Africa, due to the attention that the Afrikaners are getting from the Trump administration and people speaking up on behalf of them for facing the ethnic cleansing and genocide that they actively are facing. For reference, by the way, some stats that I have seen, I have not verified them, but some stats that I have seen. So the global average of murders, for example, is about 6.1 per 100,000. Do you want to know what according to this person, the stats were for white farmers in South Africa? 109 per 100,000. So that tells you about the murder rate of these people in particular versus the global average and even some other places around the world. But because the US had the goal to take in 60 or so white South African refugees, everybody kicked up a fuss, and it was all because of the race of them, because white people nowadays cannot be oppressed under the racial justice framework that we have in Western society. The Episcopal Church in the US made that very clear. But what the South African Parliament have gone one step further now and have said that any discussion of this relating to the Afrikaners and their treatment will now be branded as treasonous and right-wing racist propaganda misinformation. Allow me to hand you over to this gentleman now, where he will explain that in no uncertain terms for you, ladies and gentlemen.
And all their inner circles here in Parliament who went to the United States to spin a narrative of victimhood of white people being murdered by blacks, mobilizing the United States government to...
Remember, 109 per 100,000.
Interfere in the domestic affairs of our country. What measures, if any, have you used to scrutinize these treasonous acts of white right-wing racist extremist movements, especially in relations to how they are...
There you go, treasonous acts. So if you oppose, your family being murdered, your land forcibly taken away, your wife, sister, daughter, all of these things being raped, your sons being drowned in baths of hot acid, all of these things, right? If you object to that purely because that you're having this done to you because you're actually successful and you just happen to be of a different skin color than us, and that just makes you oppressors by virtue of your skin color, that this is treasonous and this is right-wing racist propaganda. Hard to get more evil than this if you remember the videos and stuff that we went over, which I'll refer back to again for context in this one now. But yeah, it's just evil stuff.
To scrutinize.
And I say God bless the Trump administration for actually being there for these families that are facing persecution. These are women, children, and just regular farming families that we're talking about that are just being killed and having these horrific things being done to them simply because of their race and simply because they're successful, because they own about half of the farmland in South Africa, despite the fact that they're only 7% of the population. They're just extremely successful group of people, again, extremely successful minority, and that's why they're being persecuted.
These treasonous acts of white right-wing racist extremist movements, especially in relations to how they are funded, so as to protect the imminent threat of civil war in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kersa. Honorable Minister, your response, please.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. As indicated earlier, the law enforcement agencies are investigating the treasonous act of misinformation and also that which is provided for in the, I forgot the right naming of the act that talks about treason in the country.
Leave it to politics to bring out the absolute worst evil in people, right? Leave it to political gain to bring out the worst evils in people. So what we're talking about now, and just to add insult to injury, we have, for example, President Ramaphosa of South Africa, who you have not only just bringing in policies that outright, for example, allow the government of South Africa to confiscate land from the Boers without compensation under just pure force of military. So literally doing the same thing that the communists done in the Soviet Union and stuff like that, expropriating land by force. And then when they try to, when they decide, when they make that decision that maybe it's not worth staying around, maybe I ought to get some help, maybe my family's in danger, maybe I need to move somewhere to find a better life, at the very least until, either like the regime changes or the policies change, just the general situation change, whether it becomes, a more loving country, They're more accepting of people that can trace their origins there back 500 years. They can trace their origins back 15 to 20 generations. Okay, they're native to that land at that point. But no, if they object to their land being taken away, the female members of their family being raped and tortured, them being raped and killed, their sons and stuff being, again, raped and killed, they object to that, they're cowards, according here to President Ramaphosa.
In many, many ways, and none of us ever having to want to run away to another country for fictional reasons that we are being persecuted.
Keep that fictional in mind, ladies and gentlemen.
We are united in diversity, and none of us should ever feel that they have lost courage, that they've now become cowards and want to run. Ons bly hier. Ons is Afrikaners. En ons gaan...
Cowards. Fictional. Again, do tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what's fictional about this? Again, I referred to this video before. This video is the video of the long single-lane highway in South Africa, whereby, again, dotted all along both sides of the road, probably about 2-3 meters apart, maybe a little bit more from what I can see. There's just this giant line of white crosses going all up this road, and each one of these crosses symbolizes a person that's been killed simply because they were a white farmer, pretty much. No, a white South African, an Afrikaner, a Boer. This is the kind of fiction that we're talking about. This monument on the Plasmord, for example, which I will find for you now, where you have things like this, as I said, on the Plasmord. So fictional, ladies and gentlemen. You have things like this. You have this photo of a young girl. And the caption, ladies and gentlemen, is cut off. It says here, standing with a cross for her daddy this weekend. If they object to it, if they decide that maybe I don't want to be around, maybe I want to protect my children, apparently they're a coward. I think the only cowards are the gutless fuckers that are doing this simply because they're of a different skin color, and then have the gall to call other people racist. Don't hate the left enough sometimes. Truly, truly disgusting. And there are people that cheer it on. There are people that cheer it on purely because, again, the Afrikaners happen to have the wrong designated skin color. Don't believe me, look at how many people that because the Trump administration resettled again, only however many it was, about 60. And I said the Episcopal Church went as far to rescind a long-standing agreement that it had with the government for the resettling of refugees. Now, they only care when they're third world barbarians that have no place in a civilized society. just happen to be of a certain skin color. That's all they care about. They don't actually care about people that are in danger. They care about using the guise of refugee protection to replace the ethnic populations in their homelands. For us, in places like America, doing it in Ireland, they're doing it all across Europe. And we need to resist. And it starts ultimately with realizing that our empathy is at suicidal levels. And, you know, it's not down to us to solve all the world's problems. A lot of these people are making, a lot of the governments that are in these places, they're making the problems of the people to themselves, and we had nothing to do with it. One thing we do have something to do with, however, is the amount of people we're killing in our own lands, our own people that we're killing, whether it's abortion or whether it is assisted suicide, which is all the rage at the moment. You know, in socialist country, suicide hotline calls you. And this is being led, the charge for this is being led by Kim Leadbeater, the Labour Party in the UK. Covered last time a list of safeguards that were voted down by Kim Leadbeater and allies. Safeguards such as not talking to under 18-year-olds about assisted suicide. That one was shot down. Such as not talking to people about assisted suicide that did not mention assisted suicide. All of these different safeguards, quote unquote, that we were told this was going to be one of the safest bills to be brought through to talk about this controversial legislation. And they're making it clear they just want to talk to anybody about it. And they're making it clear, for example, Kim Leadbeater here, this is from Right to Life UK, where she just shrugs off the reality that anorexia patients will be able to access assisted suicide if their condition under her bill, saying they'd likely die before completing the process anyway, as a reason to, you know, allow them to go with it. Or, again, making out that this is going to be one of the safest bills, when in reality it is going to be heavily politicized, and it's not going to be long before you have the wrong political opinions. Well, now we're just going to assisted suicide you out of the way because you're politically inconvenient, and we're going to be able to, you know, make money doing it. Just like the young girl in Netherlands, I believe it was, I've forgotten her name, but she was long-standing suffering with depression, and the state in the Netherlands, I believe, decided the best course of action for her would be to kill herself at a charge of whatever the hell the charge was. Fantastic remedies coming on here. Liberalism is so amazing, isn't it? Where's this scientific and ethical utopia that the atheists were talking about again? I don't know. But anyway, here's Kim Leadbeater in Parliament just shrugging off the anorexics will be able to access assisted suicide because, you know, they're going to die anyway.
That if a patient was so ill as a result of not eating and drinking for whatever reason, they would die before the process of assisted dying would be able to take place, as it could take up to two... I'll just finish the point if I may. As it could take up to 2 months to complete all the stages of the assisted dying process as set out in the bill.
So, say, because it'll take 2 months or whatever, they're going to die anyway. They're going to die anyway, so might as well offer them the ability to off themselves, you know. We've just become such just pro-death culture, whether it's glorifying abortion, not just like saying that the old Clinton line, right? The old Clinton line where it would be safe, legal, and rare, I think is the term they would use. Safe, legal, and rare. Now people glorify how many babies they've killed. It's disgusting. It's honestly disgusting. Give you a little example right now. So in the UK, just as of 2021, which I've talked about before, babies to the tune of about 200, where is it? Here we go. Babies to the tune of 214,256 were killed in England and Wales. As of 2021, that's the most recent numbers that we have. And they've been linearly increasing. Well, there was a linear increase year on year for a while. So bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to show you this graph now, because ultimately these are things that we really need to confront. We need to confront some of the logical conclusions of the positions, the political positions that we've taken over the last many years. But we need to talk about this. We need to confront this, because this is the reality. So as you can see here, for a while they've been staggeringly high for this 5-year period from 2011 to 2016. Already 185 to 190,000 babies killed a year. This is a genocide at the end of the day. This is us genociding our next generation. And then we wonder why we can't replace our own population. And then front for more immigration. We need more immigration, right? And that's a front then for greater replacement, which was always the goal. But look at this, from 2017 to 2019, just this linear increase. In 2016, you're looking at about 185 thereabouts. And then in 2019, you're looking at about 208,000. So you're going to an extra 20,000 a year over that time frame. And then it's only proceeded to increase again. It's increased year on year from 2016. Age standardized abortion rate for residents, 18.6 per 1,000 women. Things we need to talk about, man. Things we need to talk about, because this is now getting to the level where it is a civilization level threat. I don't care people that, say no uterus, no opinion. I'm sorry. The downfall of society, i.e. everybody potentially facing a extinction level threat. It's everybody's business. I don't care what anatomy you have. It's everyone's business. I'm sorry, abortion does not just affect women either, as unpopular as that will make me for saying it. It isn't. It doesn't just affect women, because it does affect the father as well, because it's the father's child also. I think people that say that often forget that. But anyway, we do have, however, not to go on a tangent about abortions as a separate conversation in a way, is part of this pro-death culture that we've cultivated over the last, God knows, ever since I've been alive. It's almost like we take pride in it, which is not good. There's been many MPs, however, that have been spoken out against this bill now who previously voted for it, which is good to see. It's good to see some of the MPs, especially some of the Labour MPs, being courageous enough to go against the political orthodoxy in a lot of ways, because we've seen what have happened. We've seen what have happened to MPs that have gone against the political orthodoxy. So, for example, you have Peter Lamb, for example, previously voted yes, this apparently now will vote no. This according to Dan Hitchens, who, as I previously mentioned, was the senior editor of First Things magazine. He says, quote, assisted dying has always seemed to be the next great liberal reform. Again, makes you wonder, what is the value of these great liberal reforms if all they do is bring about death? I considered proposing the bill myself, but the road from compassion to dystopia may well be far shorter than we think. Yep, very true. Very, very true. It tells you a lot about how we gave up our rights to bear arms, and next thing you know, people are getting jailed for social media posts. Jonathan Hinder for Labour voted yes, will now vote no. My concerns have only deepened. I find the idea that helping people to end their lives could be a profit-making enterprise to be deeply disturbing. A Labour MP with a conscience. Jesus Christ. You do have some, for example, like Carl Turner, who've only managed to get themselves to abstain on it, which is a little bit like, again, seeing somebody getting brutally murdered, seeing a child or seeing somebody getting brutally murdered, and then just being like, well, I'm not pro this, but I'm not against it. We're talking about kids that are being broached by their doctors about killing themselves here. We're not just talking now about elderly, suffering with all these horrendous conditions at the end of their life and just want an end to the pain and the suffering. We're not talking about that anymore. Kim Leadbeater has made it about talking about under 18s about killing themselves. So maybe, abstaining is, not necessarily a point in your favor. I was disappointed then to see that that was exactly what my MP done. He just abstained on it. I've met lawyers and some of them are good and some of them are crap, and the reality is it doesn't satisfy me on the scrutiny point. So again, really not really adding much here. But for example, here we also have George Freeman, voted for, will now vote against. I'm worried about getting it wrong. I'm worried about inadvertently creating a sort of suicide culture. I'm worried about, because we already have a murder culture, we might as well have a suicide culture as well. I'm worried about creating moral pressure on the frail and the elderly and the weak and the disabled. Charlie Dewhurst, previously abstained, will now vote against. It really feels to me that it's far wider than we were assured it was going to be to start with. For that reason, I can't support it in all good conscience. Andrew Snowden, how can I vote to allow the state to sanction, determine and administrate assisted suicide if I have this much doubt in my head about the parliamentary process and subsequent legislation? Yeah, the nail on the head in that one, in fairness. And in fairness to Lee Anderson as well, he's come out and said that he will now vote against it. I heavily disagree with him, and I've called him out on the past for previous things, but got to give him credit where credit is due for coming out and speaking out against this, even if I disagree with his reasons for doing so. See, for example, he supports the principle. I personally do not. I just have my reasons for doing so. I don't support the principle. I'm just a heavy proponent of natural birth to natural death. That's just the way I see it. And I can understand the arguments that a lot of people make. Obviously, I'm open to them. I'm open to changing my mind on a lot of things. It's something I think about all the time. I ponder these moral questions a lot, and I have my current thoughts, I have my current opinions, on all of these things, but they're always open to change. I'm always looking for a lot of moral and spiritual guidance in this regard. That's just the way I see it at the moment. So whereas he supports the principle, I do not. But in fairness, he's saying here, I do not support this bill and will not vote for it to become an act of parliament, as I believe that it does not provide the safeguards and protections my constituents deserve. Fair play. And it's nice to see an MP there, again, putting his constituents. As one thing I will say about Lee, in fairness, is it does seem that within his constituency he is quite popular, and in fairness I do hear him saying a lot about my constituents. He's there to represent his constituents. Can't fault him on that, in fairness, even though I disagree with him on a lot of things, it seems. Especially over the whole Rupert Lowe drama, the way he's conducted himself in that, I believe is not very good whatsoever. I believe he's got a lot of egg on his face for that. But again, can't fault it for keeping his constituents' concerns and what they deserve at the forefront of his mind. That's what an MP is supposed to do. And finally, of Rupert Lowe, last but one, Rupert Lowe. I was surprised to see Rupert Lowe voted for this, but in fairness, again, he voted in favour in the hope that a balanced approach could result in responsible legislation, but he, again, realised that's not what's happening. On such an important issue, it needs to be handled with absolute care. And even if you have this notion that you want it to just be for people who are terminally ill, who, are not going to live past the next week, they're in bed coughing and spluttering and, all of this stuff, and you just want it to ease the pain and stuff like that, I understand that nobody wants to see their relatives or their friends or whoever it is in pain. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. We can do it with things like our dogs and our pets and stuff like that. We don't want to see them in pain. Nobody ever wants to see that. Point being, however, with the current political situation that we have in the UK, and that's what I think these MPs are realising, is just how open it is at the moment for taking advantage of and for politicisation. That's where it is at the moment, and that's why I think we only come together to reject it the way that it is, even if there's going to be more discussions as to what the majority of people decide that they want to go. Okay, obviously I know that I don't speak for everybody. And in a democratic society, everyone's going to have their say. But when you can see how easily this is going to be manipulated for political reasons, surely, even if you support the principle, for example, like Lee Anderson, even if you support the principle, if you could see how it's going to be used and it's not going to be used for the reason that it says it is, then you really have to take that step back and be like, no, even though I agree with the principle, this bill is not the way to do it. So it's good to see people coming out and seeing that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to finish up with this absolute travesty scene from Cardiff. And then we're going to... we're going to finish up this episode here, and then I'm going to get on to recording the next one after that, because there's a big story regarding Joe Biden and the Robert Hur interview that I want to go into as well. So this is just sad to see. This makes me just sad when I see this thing, and that's why the one thing I want you to take away from this, whatever I say in this next part, is that we need to pray for people like the person I'm about to show you now. This person is deeply confused. They're suffering a lot. Society is preying on them for political reasons by not telling them the truth about what's going on. So this is an absolute travesty of a scene from Cardiff, posted at 9:07 today. And the caption of this post is, "I think I have found the ultimate DEI hire doing an interview, doing a speech in Cardiff." And this is in Cardiff. You got the standard watermelon, free Palestine flags, and you have this gigantic gentleman with long hair and what appears to be a beard. I think he has a beard. He certainly has a mustache. Yes, he does in fact have a beard. And it's your classic trans rights protester. There's a man claiming to be a woman because he's dressed in a blue dress and wearing high heels and stuff like that. Also appears to have some kind of walking stick despite being a young man. This guy is not an old, frail gentleman. In the lovely multicultural paradise of Cardiffistan in Walesabad. So I'm going to play this video now. I haven't watched this video yet, but this is the kind of stuff that's going on in these multicultural paradises at the moment.
I stand before you all as a proud Kashmiri trans Muslim woman. I'm disabled, and this state hates that. This state has banned...
Can we count the buzzwords in here? Right, so we have Kashmiri. So obviously there's the conflict that's going on out in that region of the world at the moment. So we have Kashmiri, trans Muslim. So already we can pull the transphobia and Islamophobia cards. Last I checked, the Muslim world is not exactly the most friendly to this kind of ideology. But this is the kind of incoherence we're seeing with the watermelon flag and with the trans agenda. When if this person was to go to the area that this flag represents, they would likely be thrown from the very tall concrete structure behind them. And I don't laugh at that reality, but I'm laughing at the absurdity of this entire movement. But the fact of the matter is, people, powerful places are preying on vulnerable people like this who are susceptible to these ideologies, and they want to accrue as many victim points as possible, because we've created a society where it claims, where it pays to be a victim. And woman, of course, this is a gargantuan, gigantic man with facial hair, and very likely distinctly not female anatomy. I'm just guessing using my intuition. But you can tell just from those first three words. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. For those of you who don't know what I'm doing right now, I'm counting syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. In the first 17 syllables. So we have 3, 4, so that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. In the first 12 words and 17 syllables, you don't need to know anymore about what this person is suffering with. They're suffering from, you know, an addiction to victimhood and a reason to do it, likely because the problems that they have in that life, the problems that they have in their life are likely not all that bad. You know, tend to overblow a lot of the things we're going through nowadays. A lot of the problems we don't have are not really that bad. But because there's always people in the world that have it worse than us, we need something to sort of outdo them in this victim Olympics, right? So anyway, let's just carry on now. I got a feeling I'm not going to watch the whole 3 minutes of this, but this is a travesty. This is a travesty in a once prestigious Welsh city.
Muslim woman, I'm disabled, and this state hates that.
I want to know what disability this gentleman has. I do want to know what disability this gentleman has. Obviously, I would imagine, obviously, they very likely do struggle walking by the seams of it. But yeah, not necessarily denying that. Not necessarily denying that. One thing it is certain that they're you know, they're a few raisins short of a fruitcake up here, but, you know, there might also be other physical things at play. Who knows, right?
State has burned trans and disabled people to create a smoke screen to cover the further bodies that they are burning around the world. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it, Cardiff. Today, I stand and I march for the liberation of my people in the trans community, my people in the disabled community, my people...
These people have an entire month dedicated to celebrating them. How do you get more liberated than that? These people are currently the most celebrated in many areas of the world by most people who just go to things like Pride marches not knowing the horrible history behind the, you know, the foundations of the movement, gender ideology and stuff like that, and the outright child mutilation, sterilization, and nigh on eugenics that are occurring behind the scenes in these gender-affirming care clinics. You know, the whole gender-affirming care towards children, quote-unquote gender-affirming care to children, which is just child sterilization and mutilization. That's what this person wants you to support. That's what this person wants you to support, that disgusting, grave evil. But again, this person has been overtaken by grave evil as well. And that's why we need to operate with you know, want these people to see the truth and adopt the truth so that they will recover from this heinous sickness that has afflicted them that is called leftism. We want them to be free of this. We want them to be free of the demons that are plaguing them. And that's why we pray for them. And that's why we pray for them. We pray that they will liberate themselves from this prison that they have created for themselves. Certainly do. You know, I may, you know, be laughing and joking at this person's expense at the moment, but I have no individual animosity towards this person. They haven't done anything to hurt me or to offend me really in any way. I just hope that they really do get the help that they need. Problem is, everything has been politicized nowadays because everything, contrary to what you may believe, everything where this man is saying here that they burnt these people to the ground to cover for burning bodies all throughout the world, and the you know, the treatment of trans people and stuff like that. This ideology is being glorified by all the main unions. It's being pushed on all the staff in the NHS and stuff like this. They're being forced, you know, you got staff being forced to share, female staff being forced to share their changing facilities with biological males. You have all of these people that if you say anything negative about them, people can lose their jobs. People could potentially even go to prison. Okay? You guys are the most protected demographic in this country. You guys are the most protected people in this country. You're the opposite of persecuted. You just don't like that people have different opinions that you do, and you don't like the facts. You don't like the facts don't line up with your worldview. And rather than acknowledging that, you choose then to stand on this pedestal. You choose to stand on this soapbox and proclaim all this victimhood. When there's people for saying things that men are not women, all things like this, that could be done for hate speech. Whereas you can say, for example, Free Palestine, which is a genocidal call against the Jews in Israel, against the state of Israel, and theoretically in a genocidal call against the Arab Muslims that live in Israel as well, the 20% Arab Muslim population. Point being, you can shout that and nothing will be done. At least for now. The tide, I think, is turning. But at least for now, nothing will be done. You can shout trans rights are human rights in the face of as many people as you want. You can attack people in many instances and get away with it because you guys are politically advantageous. All of the big unions, for example, Unison, for example, which is the largest union in the UK, they're heavily pumping this leftist agenda, the watermelon flag and the disgusting child mutilation rainbow flag. They're heavily pushing it. They love this. And it's just going to be gullible people that get taken in by this. Make no mistake, this person is suffering. This person is suffering. And physical disabilities aside, which obviously do have a major impact. Sad thing is that there's a certain amount of this suffering that's completely self-inflicted. Yeah, there's a certain amount of suffering that's completely self-inflicted. And sadly, the suffering has come as a result of a generation of leftist political indoctrination. And it's going to be up to us to reverse that so people actually do start healing, so people actually do cast away these demons that plague them. And we actually do return to a sense of normality. I'll let us play a little bit more, see if they say anything more that we can comment on, but I think that'll be a great place to leave it for today.
People in the Kashmiri community, to the beloved Palestinian people, to all of these people and the intersections that they represent, to meet me where I stand.
Intersection, another great buzzword.
At the crossroads of so many places of suffering. We will all be free, inshallah.
So again, you have the trained seals or the clapping seals in the audience. No surprise, because a lot of these cities now are just these multicultural hellscapes. They are hellscapes. There's a lot when Cardiff now has banners telling people to give zakat and, put faith in Allah and all of these things at taxpayer expense. Of course, always taxpayer expense, never at the expense of your socialist politician who lives in their mansion and has about 3 homes and all the expensive cars that they want whilst you live in squalor. But for some reason, people let themselves get duped into the propaganda of voting for it time and time and time again. So anyway, that'll do it for today. Pray for these people. That's the biggest thing I want to say. When I rail on the ideology that has taken over them, because make no mistake, the gender ideology, the trans ideology needs to be eradicated from society. The ideology does not mean any harm needs to be done. Does not mean that any harm needs to be done to any individual person. Okay, it doesn't mean we should go attacking people and stuff like that. Otherwise, that doesn't make us, as in people who are trying to speak up for the truth and want to return to normality, doesn't make us any better than the people we claim to be against. Such as, for example, what happened literally today or yesterday at time of recording. So this is what happened in Bristol earlier. This is a final side note before I finish up today. So in Bristol today, there was a demonstration, and of course, in any demonstration, it was attended by members of Antifa. But this was truly, truly disgusting. Why these people deserve absolutely no respect whatsoever. Because this right here, be warned, ladies and gentlemen, it's very disturbing footage. So this is footage from Sydney Jones's X page. I don't know if she was at the demonstration today. She might have been. But we have here, this is what happens when discourse breaks down, when we stop seeing this for what it is, which is this person, for example, that I just referred to in the previous video, the trans Kashmiri, whatever it is, man, right? We stop telling them the truth. When we stop telling people like him the truth of the matter, and we lie to temporarily make him feel better, it only continues the cycle and makes it get worse. So first things first, we need to just start telling people the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes them. But second of all, again, we need to be attacking it from a place of we genuinely want these people to be healthy, and we genuinely want these people to improve and realize the truth and accept that, so that they will actually be liberated. Oftentimes, if we resort to heinous violence and stuff like that, we are no better than people who we claim to be against, people like Antifa and stuff like that, and any sort of like the Muslim Defense League and stuff like that went around in the wake of the Southport attacks and the aftermath of that. Okay. But here you have, for example, this was in Bristol today, and this is Antifa attacking an elderly man in this group and knocking him to the ground. Okay, so again, this is not pleasant footage, ladies and gentlemen, but this, if we resort to things like that, these are people whom we are no better than. So here you go, there's the guy, and they knock him to the ground. So these masked up, militant Antifa, I'm going to put it on mute just so... Oh, actually, no, I'll put it on low volume. So at the very least, I'm happy that the police are actually... And the police threw him to the ground there as well. So actually, no, I was about to say something then in the favour of the police. But actually, I'm glad that I caught that. The police here dragging him to the ground. Okay, so... At the very least, you can say that the police intervened as soon as they saw what was happening. But here you go. This just shows the state of the country that we live in today. This is truly disgusting. So you have the elderly gentleman here. If you can see my cursor on the screen, you have the elderly gentleman over the left-hand side by this Park Street Clifton sign here. So we have police on horseback. We have police all up in their riot gear. From then... on the side, we have here, let's try and count them up. So we have the person, we have 1, 2, I think there's a person about there, 3, 4, 5. We have about 6 Antifa masked thugs coming in. And there you go. So this gentleman here, I'm assuming it's a gentleman, punches him in the face right there and sends him down to the ground. So here we go. We have more over here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, we have about 6 or 7 people. Police come in. So the cameraman pans over. These are scum. These are scum of the society. So the gentleman there, he's not there provoking anybody. He stood here now, right? And he should have a right to stand there, right? Now the police could maybe say, just knowing he's been attacked, these officers know that he's just been attacked. So they grab him and throw him to the ground. And they don't give a shit. He could have hit his head on the way down. I'm sorry, in many instances like this, it shows the police are no better than the fucking thugs that they're meant to police either. I'm sorry, I hadn't seen that video up till the end before that point, and that's left a really fucking bad taste in my mouth now, not gonna lie. Again, the people that are meant to protect and serve, half the time are doing the same fucking damage. Can you imagine now what would happen then if he'd hit his head on the way down and he actually split his head open and he died? Not even from the blow that he'd sustained from the Antifa thugs, but from the police. The whole fucking thing needs, not reform as in the party, whole fucking thing needs serious reform. And I hope this is waking you up. I hope this is waking you up. Seriously. Because we're in trouble. Make no mistake about it. And with that, guys, I'm going to leave you there. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Just be warned. Just not warned, but just know it will get better. In the end, we win. Make no mistake about it. Pray for these people. Pray for these people. Well, they may want to do us harm. You know, they may want to kill us. They outright say that, right? Pray for these people. Pray for these people. They got a lot of demons. They got a lot of demons, and they could do with help right now. Think about it. No well-adjusted person acts like this. Anyway, that'll do it. I'll do it for today. Have a good morning, afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, guys. Diolch yn fawr, as always. And I will catch you again very, very soon. Godspeed.